Scout Lab started with our list of no's, like who we wouldn't work with instead of who we would work with. And I think that gave us a really differentiated point of view. Like we were not to be bought. And in the agency space, like money dictates all. And I think that helped us stay true to our point of view.
Hey, what's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast for the agency owner that wants to scale and grow faster and hear amazing stories. And on today's episode, I have an amazing agency owner who's grown well past the million mark and works with some of the biggest brands in the world. So we want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly to see where you want to go in your agency with what type of clients and where your agency wants to go. So let's go ahead and jump into the show. Hey, Kaitlyn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Such a delight.
Yeah, awesome having you on. So tell us who you are, what you do.
I'm Kaitlyn Barclay. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a creative communications agency called Scout Lab. We are based in New York City and Portland, Oregon, and we work with big brands like Venmo, Wix, Adidas, Motorola, as well as a lot of challenger brands that are trying to break the status quo of a lot of the companies I just mentioned.
That's awesome. How'd you get started? What made you want to get into this life?
Yeah. I think one major takeaway as I look back on my career is really define what you know. And so when I started Scout Lab 8 years ago, I was coming from Silicon Valley. So I really understood tech and specifically multi-sided marketplaces, because that's where I came from. I came from social commerce. I started a company in 2015 that was acquired by ClassPass. And so I knew that I was interested in really creating the agency that I wish I could have hired. And when I met my co-founder, she was the first brand hire at Airbnb, had scaled them all over the world from, 1 million reservations to over 20 million. And we both had a similar experience and similar philosophy with technology companies that were multi-sided, scaling from 0 to 1. And so initially when we got together and thought, how could we make this experience of hiring and working with an agency better, we targeted the tech community and it really quickly exploded from there.
What were some of the things that you did in the beginning that helped you explode, especially on the tech community?
Yeah, it's such a good question. There are few answers. One, I believe you have to go all in. So it wasn't that I was sharing Scout Lab's existence with a few people. I shared it with my entire network. And I knew in my network there were a few nodes. So folks that work with a lot of the types of clients that I potentially wanted to pitch. And I made sure that I was showing them our capability stack, sharing our point of view. And even before that, making sure that we had a clear point of view of how we wanted to amplify and support this market. I think you really do have to have a differentiated offering, especially in the beginning when you're, a consultancy of two that really drives value for your target client. And so for us, it was really blending this like ephemeral practice of brand with agile methodology, which was universally used to develop product. And so blending that language with that of brand, which Willow, my co-founder, and I knew so well, helped create a shared language with prospective clients that were very product focused and potentially, technical founders, which allowed us to, again, sell in our point of view and work alongside those founders really seamlessly. And then again, from that initial sell to building reputation, asking for referrals, it really quickly snowballed.
How did you get these big brands or the first couple clients' attention? I think a lot of people struggle with this, and a lot of their agencies are built on referrals and word of mouth. And you mentioned that a little bit, right? And that's always icing on the cake. But how did you, when you were going, hey, we want to create an agency we wish we had that we could work with and really do something different. So how did you get these brands' attention?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the point of view. So to even go back to our founding story, Willow and I came from the tech world, so we knew that that was the industry we wanted to service. And when it came to building the foundation of our initial offering, we knew it had to be for a very specific type of founder. Now, walking back to 2016, which is when we started, many things were happening. We just went through an election. There were some pretty major brand misgrievances, like Pepsi was appropriating Black Lives Matter. Bic was like painting a pen pink and calling it for women. And that was just like really ignorant brand mistakes. And so we came to market saying, we do an extraordinary amount of research on any of our clients' potential consumers so that we have a 360 view of the audience that our customers want to acquire and retain. And that point of view helped us be what we called purpose-driven at the time. I think that term has now kind of lost its meaning over the past few years. Yeah. And I can share with you how we've adapted what that means for us. But I think originally it was like purpose-driven marketing was important because we look at a whole person when we think of customer acquisition and retention. And that was actually like extremely provocative in 2016 because I think brand safety was a top of mind for many challenger brands in particular. And so that point of view really gave people around us the tools to share who we were in our perspective, right? We were a purpose-driven organization that understood the needs of specifically tech brands to launch and scale. And then the way we got into the doors of like Motorola Solutions, of Venmo owned by PayPal, Adidas, so these billion-dollar entities was because they wanted the immersion of the cool kids, like the folks that were on the bleeding edge of culture. And because we had a really specific point of view, kind of on the edge of culture creation, that immediately opened doors for some of those multinational corporations to be like, we need to be more agile. We need to be more purpose-driven. We need to embody consumer-centric philosophy in new products, sub-brands.
And how did you show them that? Like, did you put out content? What are some of the things because there's a lot of people listening that they make a list of the people they want to work with. Let's say they go Home Depot, Lowe's, Staples, Office Max, whatever it is. How did you start getting with Venmo and Wix and those guys? Like, I'm purpose-driven, like we're the young new, kids on the town, but how did they know that? Because there's so much noise out there of so many people. Like, what were some of the things that you did to be like, did we go to networking events? Were these partnerships that you built over time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your network is your net worth. So absolutely. The bigger my network has gotten, bigger my business has grown. So that's, I think, table stakes. Like, you should be out there representing yourself and your business and be really targeted. Like, time is the most scarce resource. So make sure you're in the right rooms, talking to the right people. I will also say, like, use your identity as leverage and your existing client work. Before we got on this call, we were talking a little bit about how Scout Lab started with our list of no's, like who we wouldn't work with instead of who we would work with. And I think that gave us a really differentiated point of view. Like, we were not to be bought. And in the agency space, like, money dictates all. And I think that helped us stay true to our point of view that, like, we were trying to enable access. We were trying to empower and advance humanity in the clients that we were working with. And that made us, I think, more attractive as potential agency partners because we had that point of view. The other piece of that, and the thing I mentioned just before, is like using your identity as leverage for your point of view. So whatever gave you that point of view to begin with, right? That's probably some sort of experience or chip on your shoulder or narrative tension that you had in your existing personal or professional life. Use and leverage that to amplify your point of view. So I've done a lot of writing, and that has really paid off in spades. So, like, I wrote a piece on how AI is genderless back in 2017, published that in Fast Company. And that gave me a real, like, stake in the ground and a point of view that I could reference when I was pitching people or when people were searching me in the public domain, like, okay, who is Kaitlyn Barclay? It gave me a way to represent myself when I wasn't being directly talked to. I think that's so important. It's like, really know what know who you are, know what you stand for, know your point of view, and be unabashed of putting it out there.
Yeah, I love it. What is some of the bad about working with some of the biggest brands out there? Or what would you change? Well, let's not say bad. What would you change?
What would I evolve? Payment terms?
Oh, yes.
You'll be paid in 365 days.
That is true too. A lot of them.
I once waited, I twice waited 6 months to be paid, a six-figure bill, which was wild. Let's see. So besides procurement, which I think is just really gnarly, and because I'd only worked in like these upstarts, cool challenger brands, I had never been face to face with a procurement system that wasn't like, Daryl that sits over there in the open office. That was a real learning curve.
There's actually, before you go on to the next, I'm going to give you and everyone else listening 2 suggestions of how to get paid faster by the biggest companies in the world. Number 1 is you can always do what we call factoring. So there's companies, and especially if you work with the biggest brands. So let's say you have a $500,000 invoice and a contract, and they're paying you on net, whatever, 360 days or 6 months or whatever it is. They will buy that from you. They'll give you that cash minus maybe 5 or 10%, whatever deal you negotiate with them, because cash is king. The other one, find out who is in charge, procurement, if I can say that word. Send them flowers, send them gifts, send them whatever. So whenever they see your invoice, they put it on the top.
Yes. I will say, you have to make the head of procurement your best friend. I will say the third thing to remember, and has worked the best for us, is holding final files until you get paid. That will, any CMO, any director of marketing, or whatever respective internal contact you have internally, if you hold final files until you get paid, the payment will be made. And I never wanted to be that agency that had to use leverage to get money. But at the end of the day, as an agency owner, you are there to protect your organization, your business, your financial well-being as an organization. So holding final files, adding that in the contract, being unabashed about that delivery is, I think, really fared well with us.
Yep. Cool. What are other things you would change?
I mean, there are things. So I'll say like 75% of our business comes from kind of the challenger brands, folks that have raised a seed, Series A or Series B. And then the rest of the business is with larger organizations. And I will say it's just a different flavor. Sometimes you'll walk into an organization and your point of contact is really excited about like creating the new and moving really quickly. And perhaps they found a loophole around bureaucracy. We've had that experience before. I think most of the time, though, you're just going to have to reckon with more red tape than usual, more approvals than usual. I've heard some horror stories. It hasn't been us, but like projects that never see the light of day, which can be pretty disheartening to say the least. But yeah, I think working with larger brands, you just have to be aware of more approval processes. That being said, like working with Wix as an example, they had an incredible, really progressive, very agile culture. And we were able to do a lot very quickly. So it is possible, but I think generally speaking, that's not always the case.
What we did is we used the big brand names in order to get the companies we really wanted to work with. So when we would go, we did this with Porsche. We were the agency record for Lotus. Then they were like, okay, well, cool. Well, if you could help them out, which was always the dumbest thing to me, is like, if you could pass all their checks, you can do it for me. But I know tons of agencies that work with the biggest brands in the world, and they're like one of the worst at helping some of the smaller guys out.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. I think what I've learned is that the big brands want to see big brands in order to bring you on, which, like observes like. And I find that the big brands are most excited about your challenger brands too. So like what is the client work that you've done on the smaller side of life? Only because that tends to be the most creative. It's not like bogged down by like legal having to give their approval, which is can be very challenging with externalizing really visionary ideas again sometimes. So I will say, that being said, it is helpful to have those big names, but because the bedrock of our business is challenger brands, I also have to acknowledge in my pitch conversations that like the scopes are different, the creative process is a bit different. Because if, I'm just touting, I worked with Venmo and Adidas and Casetify, that might also deter your smaller clients that have meaningful budgets, but are like, I don't have PayPal budgets. So it is such a dance of who you celebrate, what kind of work you put on your portfolio. And I think that's ultimately your decision, really with respect of what kind of business you hope to bring towards you.
Yeah. Looking back over the past couple of years of building the agency that you have right now, is there one strategy or one story that really stands out that really you feel it puts you on the map?
It's such a good question. There are so many small and large moments, and the way that I would answer that question is like, the moments I celebrate are like when we were able to offer like a 401k matching program, like when we were able to elevate and support our workforce through, like added and more mature benefits. Like that's what I get really excited about, because when you're an agency, like human capital is really how you develop your creative ideas. It's how you build those amazing, robust relationships with your clients that get you reoccurring business. So never losing sight of that. So I think of like when my co-founder and I were able to kind of grow and support our colleagues. But I think, on the other side, when we've really made the decision sometime, I think in like 2021, honestly, it wasn't too long ago, to use every case study that we wanted to externalize. We would like externalize it to the max, make sure that we were applying thoughtfully to all of the awards, so that we could get as much credit and accreditation for these client projects. Because at least for the creative space, you're selling in like a campaign. And so there are more selling cycles than if you were to sell in like a retainer, or if you were sell in like a termed agreement. And so with that in mind, I really need to think about how making every sale count as much as humanly possible. So yeah, I would just encourage every agency owner to think of those real like amazing projects that speak to exactly the vision of the organization and what you would like to attract more of, and make sure that you're talking about it, you're developing thoughtful case studies, you're sharing it to your network, you're applying for awards on its behalf, just so you can, again, tell the rest of the world that you'd like more of that, so it can work for you as hard as possible.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I always tell everybody it's about, you're going to attract what you want, and you might as well tout what you want. And I always believe that, that's why I always laugh with our mastermind members and clients we work with. I'm like, why don't you guys have a podcast again? I'm like, then you can kind of talk about this, and you'll attract more people. And then like, it's always they'll always say to me, well, then I'll never get out of the business. And I'm always kind of laugh at them. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, then everyone's going to want to work with me because I'm the face, I'm the organization. And I always go, Gary Vaynerchuk, you think he works? You think he does project management? Do you think he does strategy for clients? I was like, hell no, he doesn't. He's got too much other stuff. But it's about setting that up. But it's first kind of starts off with identifying, what do you guys want? Who do you want? Who do you need to become? Who do you need to hire? And probably one of the most important things is like, who do you need to become? Because your agency, what people will find is it will grow as high as you will let it. And it will grow as high as you are. And then you got to keep leveling yourself up. And then when they do that, that's when the floodgates can open. And that's when, really the agency can kind of take shape a little bit more. Well, Kaitlyn, this has all been amazing. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the listeners listening in?
No, I encourage every agency owner to remember to bet on themselves. I think that, we've gone through some really crazy times. We will continue to go through crazy times. But if I can tell you one thing, bet on yourself again and again and again. You won't go wrong. It doesn't mean you won't have challenging times and times to celebrate, but hopefully it'll keep you afloat in those tough moments. So yeah, Keep on keeping on, my friends.
Awesome advice. What's the website people can go and check out the agency?
Scoutlab.com. You can find us at ScoutLabCo on Instagram if you happen to see us there. And I'm Kaitlyn at ScoutLab.com. If you ever want to chat, get in touch, or if I can give you well-intentioned advice, I'm always here for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Kaitlyn, for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this episode and you want to be around amazing agency owners where we can help level you up and keep letting you bet on yourself so other people can keep pulling you along and you can keep pushing people up as well, I'd love to invite all of you to check out our agency mastermind. Go to agencymastery360.com, click that little button on the top right. This little button says scale up. And we'll have a conversation, see if we can actually help you out. So make sure you go to agencymastery360.com. And until next time, have a swank day.